Okay, guys, thank you for joining me in the studio again today. Once again, for an Ask Me Anything live stream, and I appreciate everybody logging in, and hopefully you'll have a lot of great questions. Just as a quick reminder, this is an Ask Me Anything show, so that means that you get to ask any questions you want. There's no guarantees that I'm going to be able to have a good answer or one that you will like, but I will do my best. And if you have those questions, make sure you enter them in the comment section, depending on whether you're looking at this on your screen or on your phone, or however it could be on this side over here, or it could be down below. But go ahead and just remember, if you're trying to ask a question, if you, just like this says right up here, just make sure you do the @We the Governed. It just pops out a little bit easier from the content of the commentary that usually starts flowing through that pretty soon, especially as we get started. Now, as we have discussed many times in the past, right now we are in the middle, about halfway through the short session of the legislative session. And as you know, any time that the legislature's in session, your freedoms in your pocketbook are never safe. And every day that goes by that another bill dies, that's mostly a good thing, considering the nature of our current legislative session right now. And so I think it's always important to just remember that as these bills kind of start dropping off, I'm planning to do a little bit of a story, I think, record a video tonight just about some of the dumb bad bills that have definitely died already in Olympia, and it's a good thing. Obviously, there's a whole bunch more we wish would die, and we'll see how much the Republicans, and it is mostly the Republicans pushing back right now on some of these bills, how many more of them that they'll be able to kill and stop before they actually get to Governor Inslee's I said Governor Inslee. Boy, that's a Freudian slip. Governor Ferguson's desk. And so it's there's a lot of kind of chaos and pressure that always comes down this time of the year, and there's a lot of drama. And believe me, some of those, at this point, it is exclusively Republican legislators that are trying to do their best to expose the truth or put amendments or push back on really dumb, bad bills. In Olympia, they need your support and help, and many of you, tens of thousands of you, in fact, are doing a really good job logging in there and telling them what you think about those bills. Most of them, unfortunately, are going to be con bills, meaning please don't get it through the system, and there are some good bills in there, of course, but those are usually the ones that the Democrats don't want to see the light of day. So it is worth just being aware where we are in that whole process right now and how significant it is that we're here right now looking at that. One thing I promised, of course, starting several years ago, I think when I started doing some of these live streams, was that if I remembered and wasn't totally incompetent getting ready for the show, just to make sure that I outlined a couple of places where I'll be just around the state over the next couple weeks, so that if one of these events happens to be near you and you want to come up and meet me in person, maybe ask a question directly to me or in an audience, depending on what type of an event this is, that you just kind of have a sense of where I'll be at and to give you some of these ideas. So tomorrow, which is Wednesday, September 11th, I'll be doing, and actually I'll be in Thurston County, and this will be kind of a training session for Thurston County PCOs. It's really not, it doesn't have to be just precinct committee officers. It can be anybody who lives in Thurston County wants to be more involved in the political process. This will be the South Union Grange, starts at 6 o'clock. This will be one of the closest presentations that I've probably done in many years. So that'll be fun. Good opportunity. If you live in Thurston County, come on by, say hi. And I know we'll be talking about a lot of things you can do as a conservative activist in Thurston County or Washington State in general, how you can get more involved outside of regular, maybe political party stuff, outside of the obvious of helping on political campaigns, and hopefully going through some of that in detail and in person. You'll be able to ask me questions and talk to me there. The next week, which is Wednesday, September 18th, I will be doing a presentation at the Medina Golf and Country Club. I'll be speaker there. And this is the Women of Washington event. Starts at 6 o'clock. That is a paid event. So I know that at this point in time, if you're not a member, it's about $150 to pay at the door. I think, though, that they're really asking people to sign up in advance, and it sounds like that one's kind of filling up. So if you happen to live up there and you don't mind paying a little bit to come and see me speak, that's an opportunity to come to an event. And I always stay afterwards to talk to people. And usually they have these events where they have it open to questions as well. And so hopefully I'll be getting some questions there and an opportunity to see you if you're in that area. 2 days later, Friday, I'll be at the Turning Point chapter at the University of Washington. It's scheduled for 5 to 7 p.m. at the Hub Room 340. So you, me, and maybe Antifa too. I don't know if the indivisible crazies will want to come there and harass us or threaten us, which I think they do to those students on a regular basis. But at this point in time, since I'm not a big name speaker, my guess is they won't be there to harass us. But anyway, that's an opportunity if you just happen to be on campus and you're watching me as a student at UW or anywhere in the Seattle area, and you want to come down to the Hub and come to room 340, 5 to 7 p.m. And that's September 20th. And then on Monday, September 23rd, I will be at the Pushback for Freedom event at the Foursquare Church down in Chehalis. I've spoken there many times. Great group of people down in Lewis County. That starts at 6 p.m. And right now I have on my schedule that I'll be doing at least I think I'm going to this event, the Let's Talk, Pray, and Act event over at the Heritage Northwest Church off of 78th Street in Vancouver, Washington, starting, I believe, at 6 p.m. That one I'm a little unsure about, and I'm also unsure if I'm going there to speak or not, but I had it on my schedule, so I'll just mention it right now. I'll confirm next week. I do believe I'm going to be doing the live stream next week on Tuesday, like we would normally try to have this regularly scheduled, so hopefully that'll be helpful for you as well. So those are the events, the next 5 anyway, that I think I'll be at. Those are all this month. There are a lot of events coming up. If you are interested in having me come out and speak to your organization or your group, just make sure you get a hold of me, and you can send me an email, Glenn at We The Governed. That's Glenn with one N at wethegoverned.com. But and it would just really, I just have to coordinate on location and time. I am getting booked in a lot more events coming up here, and part of it's the Lincoln Day dinners that are coming up where I do speak at a lot of those around the state. And if you're out of state, I would definitely have to coordinate with you quite a bit because I don't do a lot of events or training outside of the state, although I do some of those on occasion. So anyway, just make sure that you reach out to me if you have a group or your local group where you want me to come out and speak, maybe at, like I said, at a Lincoln Day dinner or a Women's Republican Club or whatever your group might be. Feel free to reach out to me and coordinate. I do a lot of these all the time. And I actually prefer to speak to people in person if I can. Because right now, as you can see, I am in an empty studio right now speaking to a camera, or a camera over here more accurately. And it is much more interesting to see the audience that I'm speaking to. And so if that's possible, feel free to come to one of those events. Otherwise, I love everybody that decides to jump on these live streams and obviously spend the time to ask questions and to put the questions in the comment section here. And hopefully I will do a semi-decent job of getting to those right now. Now, if you've been watching the channel, I did launch a couple of videos today and a few over the weekend. I'm trying to improve the tempo of the show a little bit here. Really, for every video that I end up putting out there's probably another 5 or 6 that I just can't get to. And so eventually you're just, it is about trying to get as much content out there that people I think are interested in. And so let me know if you think there's topics I need to make sure I cover. I do get lots of good ideas from people who send comments on the videos down below. If you're watching this live stream and it's not Tuesday night, that means that this is already in the can, and you can still ask a question down in the comment section, and I do usually review most of those questions, and I try to get back to people as much as I can. There is somebody here that made a question about where you can find the addresses for these locations, and I try to detail it enough when I'm just verbally giving it out here that you would know where it is. I don't really tend to have a calendar, and I probably should start doing this. I don't tend to have a calendar of all the locations that I'll be speaking at normally on my website. That is something that I know I need to start working on and putting out there for people who might be interested in actually seeing me in person. But I just haven't done that as much lately. I have done sometimes on the Doge Washington training classes in the past, but there's a lot more stuff that's coming up in the future, and I will try to do a better job of that moving forward. Let's see. Let me get to some of the questions here that people, and it's nice because usually in the beginning, the early questions are the ones that are easiest for me to get to here. I do have a question here about HB 2489. This is from Dilly Dahlia, and it's saying that it would allow homeless public camping if no shelter space available. Thoughts on why are they doing this when SCOTUS has already ruled on the Grants Pass case? A lot of this is, and that one I'm not specifically familiar with that particular bill. Obviously, I could look it up here, but I mean, we've seen versions of this bill out here many times, and local ordinance variations on this as well. And essentially, it really goes back more to the Boise, Idaho case that really kind of triggered the justification for why we had a lot of these homeless camps out here. And it has to do with this theory that, hey, we don't have enough shelters, and so therefore you can't prevent people from sleeping on the street if they want to. It's what it really is it's mostly virtue signaling. It's also the homeless industrial complex looking for more excuses and opportunities to justify how they can take millions more dollars and squander it and waste it and make sure they do nothing to help the homeless problem. Almost all of the nonprofits that we've looked into lately that are still involved in supposedly solving homelessness, nearly all of them are just essentially fronts and justifications for keeping themselves employed in the grant gravy train, and their interest in actually solving the problem or fixing homelessness is zero. They have no interest in that at all. And anything they can do to give themselves a legal patina to justify their existence, they will do. And oftentimes, since there's so much money flowing into this, these kind of grant grifting operations, they're going to try to funnel as much money as they possibly can into their own back pockets to make sure that what they're doing is getting your tax dollars, right? So they can just keep getting more and more of your money. This is how these guys operate. This is how they've always operated. This is how they plan to operate even more. And if they can get an extra bill thrown in there to make it a little bit easier, then that's what they want to do. So I think that I don't know where that bill is specifically in the process, but that is one of the ones that is worth following up on and just seeing how it works. Unfortunately, there's a lot of bills like that out there, but I will put that one on my list to look at a little bit more in the future. Next question here is Dean Barnes 5530. Hello, Glenn. When will you be in Tacoma again for Doge Washington training? You said Doge training, but Doge Washington training. And that's a great question. I don't have a schedule for Tacoma yet. I think since the last time, right now there's a couple of plans to do a few of these that haven't really come, we haven't nailed down the dates of the times yet. One of them I know is going to be in Spokane. At least one of them is going to be down in, I believe we have a date in April already in Vancouver, but I don't want to nail that down for sure. I'm usually only talking about some of the events coming up in the next month or so, but and I believe that we're working on one hopefully up in Bellingham pretty soon. But I don't think we've got one on the planning process right now in Tacoma. So if you're a member of any organization up there, it could just be a loose affiliation of Republicans in Tacoma. Since I've never met a Democrat that wants to be involved in Doge or cleaning up government, it's possible that they're out there, and I'd encourage them to get involved and to show up for these things. But generally, you're going to find like a local Republican group, just have them kind of sponsor it. Try to find a place that we can use without having to pay for it. We're really trying to keep the cost down low on these things, and anything we can do to just get more and more people kind of involved in the mindset of looking at where your tax dollars really go locally. What happens to them when they hit those government coffers and then they start to get dispersed? What's the process, the decision-making process, if any, on where and how they distribute this, and who gets that money, and what those organizations actually do with the money, whether they do what they promise they're going to do, whether they even follow up and tell you what they did with it, whether they're just making up stories and lying as they steal it and line their own pockets, or whatever the story is. Unfortunately, you're not going to usually like what the answers are, but looking and finding out what's going on with your tax dollars, it's incumbent on us to do it. As I've mentioned before, there is no such thing as a real state audit. We don't really audit anything in the state. We have an auditor's office, but mostly what they do is they go out and they give everybody a gold star for participating. And it doesn't make them bad people. They've created a structure that makes the auditor's office very weak and ineffective in the auditing process. They do have a good division there in their fraud, and the fraud investigation unit, I think, is pretty capable. But to trigger them to come in and be involved takes a fairly high threshold. And most of the time, their objective is to treat everybody that they audit like a customer and not like a real audit. So that's mostly about getting gold stars to everybody. Thank you for participating. Good job. And when they do have findings, they negotiate down the findings. So they aren't really an effort to try to clean up what's going on. And so that's one of the things I think it's always worth remembering, that when we really look at what these audits are, they aren't what you think they are. They aren't what you think an audit is. And that's just how they operate. So anyway, that's if you want to do something in Tacoma, motivate your local group there. Pierce County Republicans is a pretty good group up there. There's also a couple of other clubs, and if they're interested in sponsoring the event, and I'll work out some of the logistics with them, of course, but if we can nail down a date, then I'm happy to come up there, and anywhere else in Washington State or even outside of the state, although most of the training that we do is focused on the state because there's different rules when you go into places like Idaho or Oregon or South Dakota or other places where I've done some training before, North Dakota. What happens is the disclosure rules are slightly different. Some of the statutes involving what they can and cannot disclose, and your method of getting some of that information is a little different state to state. But the basic process is the same. And the more people doing this, the far better off we will be. And this is the next question here is Lori Gardner 2079, and you're wondering where you can find the addresses for the locations. And again, I'll tell you, if you look this up, the South Union Grange is on Tilley in Thurston County, and that's the one tomorrow that I'll be at. The Medina Golf and Country Club, if you look that up online, you'll see what the address is right there. That's where the Women of Washington event is next week. Turning Point at University of Washington, you can probably find University of Washington, and the Hub Room there, HUB Hub, and it's room 340. That one, the one challenge of going up to University of Washington, I don't know what the non-student access is to that area, but you always have to find a parking spot there. They have parking lots, and it's a little bit of a challenge. I've spoken at other college student groups many times before, but it's been a few years, actually, since I've been up to the UW, so it's kind of fun to come back and see that again. The Foursquare Church in Chehalis, there is only one of them that I'm aware of, and that is right downtown Chehalis. It's not far from the Still headquarters there, or the Still shop. I think it's called the Saw Shop there in Chehalis, and I do go. That's actually relatively close to me. And the Heritage Northwest Church off 78th in Vancouver, I don't know that address, but again, if you look it up online, now you're able to look up all this stuff online and get the addresses pretty easily. Next question here, Michael Case 8231. After looking over that 3D printing bill, I have to ask if this was a shadow hit on Boeing. I don't know. I mean, gosh, for the kind of constellation of bad bills that are related to Second Amendment issues, the 3D, and by the way, the 3D bill is also kind of a First Amendment issue. At least that's the way the courts have typically looked at that. And remember, the Second Amendment Foundation, which is based in Bellevue, Washington, where I interned many, many years ago when I was in college. I interned there one summer. They took a federal case on this issue a while ago up, and the federal court rules seem to be pretty clear to me that the state law would be illegal. And but of course, that's never stopped the Democrats, who always believe that they have a way to suppress your First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, Fourth Amendment rights, and pretty much any other right they think they can squash in an effort to try to grab more of your cash and more power for themselves. So that is the way they roll, and I don't see them changing anytime soon until we start to replace some of them in government, and I think it's very important. Let's see. There's a question here from Rich6646. If I wanted to create a fraud company to steal money from the people, what type of business would you suggest? I love that question. Thank you so much. That's actually a really good question because I know that in the back of your mind, every time I talk about a case of fraud and waste and probably, excuse me, a level of incompetence and stupidity that's usually involved in these things, people always wonder, how can such a stupid and incompetent person get so much money for nothing? And that's a great question to ask. So if you want to also be in on the grant grifting gravy train, take some of those taxpayer dollars that are being squandered and wasted every single day that government employees go to work in Washington state, I would suggest one of three different categories. Number one, word salad operations. Just use ChatGPT or some other kind of AI program just to help you create a silly, stupid, meaningless DEI, social justice sort of operation, and pitch yourself to the Department of Commerce. The sky's the limit. They have billions of dollars they can hand out there if you include the CCA funds. It's always helpful if you can throw in like social justice language that involves environmental green opportunities, declare carbon as the greatest threat to humanity since the asteroid struck the planet years ago, and try to come up with some kind of theme about how you're really not going to achieve anything, but it sounds really good. Think of what an evergreen college professor would want you to say, and you draft it up that way, and you send it in. It can be meaningless. It can be pointless. Get some nice video images, some graphics work that just really makes you feel like you're down with the struggle. And if you can create a nonprofit, there's no reason why you can't ask for 7 figures, and they'll feel bad, and then maybe they'll downgrade it to a 6-figure kickback to you. And always imply, of course, that you're going to be strong and will help them help the politicians that make sure you get that grant money. If you imply there's some money coming back to them without putting that in writing or openly saying that in any public forums, extra brownie points to you. And it doesn't hurt if after you get that 6-figure payout from whether it's a Department of Commerce grant or some other funnel operation for tax dollars, then what you do is make sure you give a little bit of a campaign contribution, maybe your wife, your neighbors, send it over to whatever Democrat's in charge of that local jurisdiction, because a lot of these get fed through counties or cities, and send them a nice little donation through ActBlue. And be careful after you send that donation. If you've used ActBlue, you're going to have to cancel your card because immediately they'll take that information and start rapidly distributing it and charging you for all kinds of stuff. So you'll want to cancel that card pretty quickly after it. But if you've made that contribution in that way, then you can probably keep the gravy train going for quite a while. Now, if social justice isn't really your thing, then what you do is you set up some kind of an environmental green save the pocket gopher or the salmon, or just really, you can make up fake animals if you want, and just claim that you're going to go out and save it. It's really nice, though, if you can integrate it into some kind of social justice angle, maybe an LGBTQ rainbow flag, whatever it is. Just use ChatGPT, and you can probably make up all kinds of great stories and send it in. It's pretty amazing how much of this stuff actually produces shockingly large grant dollars that get kicked out with zero accountability, zero auditing, zero concern, and the more you are down with the struggle and understand how to just kind of speak as though you're a social justice warrior, DEI kind of person, an enviro fanatic, whatever it is, you got a really good chance. There's a lot of opportunity for pretending you care about the homeless and putting on an image like you do. Get some photos of yourself out there in a few homeless camps, maybe handing out some food, or don't take pictures of yourself handing out like fentanyl or anything like that. They don't mind funding the people that do that, but they don't want you to actively demonstrate that you're handing out fentanyl. But maybe you can hand out a kit that helps the drug addicts take fentanyl or take meth. And if you do that, the Democrats will fall all over you. These bureaucrats, they love it. and they'll come up with a way to justify why they're going to give you a grant. And there's all kinds of different schemes and plans, apparently, that you can run that nobody's really going to be that concerned about. So it's a great way to extract part of the taxpayer cash for yourself, and you have to deliver almost nothing on it to get the money. And that's just, it is the way it goes. And I wish it wasn't so absurd, but that is how it works. So let me restore my chat here. There's a lot more comments than what I was getting to, and for whatever reason, I have to reset this pop-out chat periodically, and it is taking a few seconds. It's just amazing how much of this that they send out that way. Let's see. Question T8858X. Are any nearer to the King County side? So you're looking at a Doge Washington training class, I'm assuming. And again, there's a lot of places in King County where we can do some of these events. So, find a group near you that's interested and organized. Try to get at least, just to make it worthwhile, try to get where you think you can get at least 30 or 40 people. No more than 250 people. That's about the most that we can really do a training, kind of an event with people, but try to get it somewhere in that ballpark. So it'd be nice to get it somewhere 40 up to 250 people. Churches are great places to host these events. And really any place in King County. I come up there frequently. I'm happy to continue to come up there, of course, for a long time. The last time I was up there, I was in Burien. And if you can find a church, if you don't know right now, feel free to reach out to the King County Republicans. I think they've been generally pretty good in helping coordinate. And again, it's not restricted to Republicans, but if they are organizing the venue, sometimes that's just a little bit easier to come out and do that. I see somebody's going to see me in Chehalis. That's great. Rob Doghouse at We the Governed. Was I the only duped by Digital Currency Moderation Act? This isn't too far off the mark, as I noticed my feed store in Yelm and Safeway, Wally World all have beta tested it. I am not sure actually what you're talking about there. If you're talking about the where they're trying to use Bitcoin or something like that for some of these local transactions, I think there's a number of places that have been doing that. And I think you're actually reaching out to me from Thurston County. If you're who I think you are, asking that question. And I don't know about being duped. I'm a big skeptic, honestly, regardless of knowledge and familiarity of blockchain technology and all the theoretical potential upside of being able to use it. I still am skeptical a bit on a lot of these digital currencies, partially for the lack of transparency, partially for the lack of how does it work without electricity when things get tough, and other reasons. There's no real verifiable sense of value, I think, that you can attach to them. But I don't know about being duped. I mean, I think that these places will try different ways of being paid, and if it works for them, that's great, and if it doesn't, they'll go back to a more traditional method, I think. Let's see. Jason Fisher, 1530, question. Hope you are well. Will the millionaire's tax pass as is, or will it be watered down? That's a good question. Actually, Jason, I'm not sure that I'm not 100% positive that the millionaire's tax is going to get through. I think that it's getting a lot more pushback and blowback than the supporters anticipated. And it's not that they're you're not going to prevail with them, I think, in saying that imposing this tax will chase away a lot of wealthy people from the state. They don't really care about that. And remember, we're one of 9 states that, in fact, I know I did a video, I mentioned this earlier, but we're one of 9 states in America that don't have an income tax. What we do have is higher sales tax and higher property taxes than most people do. And there's always been an argument in Washington state that if you eliminated property tax completely, maybe an income tax would be okay. But historically, going back to the 1930s, an income tax has been rejected by Washington state voters every single time it's been tried since 1932. And so, and the Supreme Court, back when they believed in English and modern language, and they had the ability to read, which is probably a skill that's been entirely lost by the current crew that's on the court, they recognize that you couldn't impose an income tax the way our Washington state constitution was written, at least not a progressive income tax the way that they describe it. And so they really were able to break through that dam of English and the restrictions from the Supreme Court with the capital gains tax scam that they passed a couple years ago. And that was really the backdoor way of trying to get an income tax on the books. And so because the greed of government is insatiable, and there's no greed in human history that's ever been greater than the greed of government, they recognize that this is maybe their opportunity to grab a little bit of cash. Part of it's a panic, and I think people don't realize exactly how much the political establishment of Washington state, which consists entirely at this point in time of Democrats. It doesn't mean that it's always consistent of Democrats, but right now it's only Democrats that are in charge of anything. You have local pockets of Republicans in county level governance, but there's no Republicans in any statewide position or with any influence or control over any of the state agencies. So 100%, and most of the big cities, of course, are entirely controlled top to bottom by Democrats. All the labor unions are owned by the Democrats. Pretty much most of the lobbying groups are controlled and owned by Democrats. I mean, it's a Democrat world out there in Washington state right now. And so when you look at this, they are in panic mode because the inevitable result of all these other taxes that they've put on the books gradually over time, and it is starting to reduce the amount of money that the state's going to collect in taxes. And that's happening all over the place. So their budget's way off. They're not getting the money they thought. For years, we were benefiting from a very robust economic development in Washington state where the growth was extensive each and every year moving forward. Well, that's changing now. And so now it's shifting back. And suddenly they don't have the gravy train rolling with quite as much excess cash. So they're actually having to start making cuts. And if there's one thing that Democrats and government have generally not been able to do, it's to make a cut on the budget. They just don't know how to cut spending because distributing other people's money is the way they buy their political influence. And if they can't distribute other people's money or bloat the bureaucracy bigger and bigger every year, then they start to look at potentially losing political power. And they know that. And so they're desperate by hook or by crook, by law or by deceit, by whatever means necessary, finding ways to extract cash and paying off their insiders. And this is particularly significant right now because there are potential problems where they could start to lose political power. If they lost a few seats in the state House, the state Senate, that would indicate a changing of the tide, and that would not be good for the insiders. So they're figuring they got to grab as much as they can while they have a majority of crazies kind of in control in their legislative caucus right now. Now, keep in mind, there's divisions within the Democrat caucus, too. There's a tendency for those of us in the more conservative, libertarian side of the world to view them as monolithic, and I'm sure that's how they want to be viewed. But the reality is there are divisions inside over there, and those divisions do create problems for them in pushing some of their crazier ideas out there. They're a little worried about being perceived, at least going into an election year, about being too pro-criminal. It's obvious the Democrat Party's been very pro-criminal. They like releasing violent criminals early. The Democrats have bent over backwards to find the worst violent sex predators they can find in America and make sure they secretly put them into your communities. They're discovering this in Kennewick right now. The same story that we dealt with in Tenino a few years ago, in Kent and in Tacoma and all over Washington state. And so they're doing a lot of things to try to conceal just how pro-crime they are within their own caucus. And so they're pretending that they don't want to defund the police, even though they take steps to do so all over the place. One of the recent stories I did that about Ryan Mello, who's the current executive director in Pierce County, is this effort to run a public safety tax. It's a terrible idea because essentially what they did is they removed a ton of money from the Pierce County Sheriff's Department and law enforcement in general and shoved it into all of these other grifting operations. So they purposely defund it, and then they say, oh, my word, we need to raise money to pay for law enforcement, right? And most generally, especially when you have a high crime area like Tacoma, where generally the people want to support law and order and less crime, they'll say, okay, we'll accept a public safety tax. What they've really done is they've moved the money out to create a vacuum and to purposely defund the sheriff's office. They want to put more money in with this tax, and then what they're going to do is they're going to keep defunding it and claiming they just need more money in the future. Because one of the few things that people will actually vote for consistently over time is they'll say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to vote for public safety, or I'm going to vote for the fire department." What they won't vote for is a bunch of grifting kickback schemes that everybody knows are just fraudulent or corrupt. And so, but that's, they need to fund those operations because that's their foot soldiers and their political campaign folk and kind of paid for protesters when they need to stir up a ruckus to keep their political power. And so that's kind of how it works right now. My guess is, though, that this tax game, this income tax game, they've been wanting this for a long, long time. They might see this as their last chance to potentially get it through, even knowing that it would take years to implement and nothing would happen initially. And so they may be trying to push it through that way right now. But at the end of the day, they may just think, well, we can try again next time, right? That could happen. And that's better than where they're at right now. So we'll have to see where it goes. Yeah, I like some people in there talking about the grant grifting operation. Let's see. Can you please explain the Whistleblower Act? And is a state employee truly safe from retaliation or getting fired? Also, would the act work against our Supreme Court judges? Well, that is a good question. And so the theory has been, and I think actually this goes back to, I want to say the 70s when they first started doing some of the whistleblower laws. Washington State does have a Whistleblower Act that in theory protects state employees, but in order for it to actually protect you, you have a very specific set of things that you have to do to be officially recognized as a whistleblower. And what the state will do is they will be pissed that you expose their corruption or their incompetence or whatever you're uncovering. And so they will ignore the Whistleblower Act and they will find a way to destroy your career anyway. And they will put you in an office in a closet somewhere. They will basically try to make your life as miserable as possible moving forward. That is what the state has done every single time I've ever seen a whistleblower come forward in the last 2 decades. So I'm not aware of it ever being a situation where the state employee isn't retaliated against. But it's been worse lately, where Governor Inslee in particular went after a whistleblower a couple years ago, clearly did everything right to be recognized as a whistleblower, and they just destroyed the guy and took away his job, essentially. And so after seeing that, as a state worker, you'd have to know there's really no true whistleblower protection. Could the statute be reformed and fixed? Yes, but you still need semi-honest, corrupt people in government, and you don't even have that anymore. So I'm not sure that you're going to get that kind of I don't think you're going to get that kind of support typically. So whistleblowers are best to be as anonymous as they possibly can be. And those are the people who you'll see reaching out to Brandy Cruz, reaching out to me, going to Jonathan Cho or Ari Hoffman or wherever to make an impact and try to share the truth that's out there. So, and if you have something on Supreme Court judges, I am really interested in that. And but I would start out with just reaching out to me, absolutely not from your state computer. I'm getting close to launching a special whistleblower project here at the We the Governed. And when I do that, that'll be a good way to reach out to me directly. I will make an announcement on it pretty soon. And I am very interested in anything on the state Supreme Court judges. One thing to remember is not just sending some anonymous, just generic stuff. I get a lot of that. But if you have documents, if you have evidence, start collecting that evidence right now so that we can make that a more productive conversation and see where we go from there. Jason Fisher, 1530, question, how does one square away that it's okay for Ballard to clear out homeless sweeps, but yet Seattle can't? Are city boundaries that strong? Well, to be fair, Ballard is actually in the city of Seattle. So essentially, Seattle's collective stupidity encompasses the entire area of Seattle, which would include Ballard. However, sometimes different neighborhoods are a little bit more active in how they respond to some of these problems. If you happen to live right next to one of the city council people's homes in Seattle, that gives you some insulation. Usually, the way these hypocrites roll is they're happy to destroy other neighborhoods in the community as long as it's not too close to where they live. And so oftentimes that will modify slightly how things are actually run in their communities. So just because they do a sweep somewhere doesn't really mean that they're cleaning up the city. It just means that it's a temporary move so that they can pretend to justify the hundreds of millions of dollars they got into whatever grant grifting operation that supposedly led to that. And don't worry, if you've missed your homeless drug addicts, they'll be coming right back in soon. And this has been a struggle because there's so much money in making sure this problem continues to get worse, and the Mexican drug cartels are in on it, the drug distribution fencing operations, the child trafficking, the prostitution rings, everything kind of depends on this lawlessness going on. And on top of that, you overlay it with this almost $1 billion a year that goes into homeless projects of various kinds in the greater Puget Sound area. And so I mean, this is the gravy train of all time. And the last thing they want to do is fix it or clean it up. If they did, they might have to cut that back their budget. There are thousands and thousands of people who make good money off of making sure that problem never gets solved. So I wouldn't see it going away anytime soon unless you had some serious people that get into government, which means at this point in time, I haven't met a Democrat that was that serious lately. If they are, they get removed quickly. So it would mean that somehow Seattle would have to change its wayward ways and elect somebody who believes math is real and actually cares about cleaning up the community. And that would take some work to find a majority of people like that to get on the council there, as far as I've seen lately. Okay, so there's a question here from Kinematic J. Will Representative Scott's payroll tax bill pass? It seems like the backup to the millionaire's tax. I actually don't think that one is going to go anywhere. And I suspect it's going to die because Representative Scott, who's kind of the Democrat socialist guy from Seattle, he's viewed as kind of crazy even by his own caucus. And a lot of times, I don't think people sometimes are aware. And listen, I wasn't before either, but a lot of times there's a lot of infighting that goes on behind the scenes on these bills. And it has nothing to do with whether or not the merits of whatever proposed bill that exists. A lot of it is this interpersonal fighting that's going on between legislators, between little groups and factions that are inside the caucuses, and they'll, out of spite, out of envy, out of annoyance, out of all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with the merits of what's being proposed, they'll decide to go in and kill a bill or let it die for other reasons. And Scott doesn't have a lot of friends, Representative Scott. He's alienated some of the other members of his own caucus, and so some of that division and infighting could lead to just having bills get killed. And this is what happens. I mean, Republicans do the same thing sometimes, depending on who their leadership is. It's a small club, right? We don't have 435 representatives like they do back in D.C. We have 98 in the House side, and you have 49 in the Senate. That's a pretty small group, and then within that, it's broken into the two caucuses. So it's a small number of people. You get to know them pretty well, but that also means they annoy each other sometimes, and there's all kinds of games that happen behind the scenes, and never doubt the arrogance of politicians and believing that they're so important and they have so much power that they'll happily take their petty power and beat up on other people, even if they agree with the idea. One of the reasons that happens, too, is that a lot of times there's lobbying money that comes in to promote various ideas. And if they solve the problem that the lobbyists are giving them money for or trying to lobby on, then they lose the incentive of that lobbying organization to still fund their political campaigns in the future. And so if they can drag out solving whatever the problem is, if they can drag that out for session after session after session, fight the good fight, virtue signal a bill, but know that it's not going to go anywhere, let it die in committee, say they fought to the bitter end, did their best, whatever they need to do, they still get then these campaign contributions that keep coming from those special interest organizations, even if they don't solve the problem. In fact, they probably get more of them because the problem doesn't get solved. And so there's a lot of this calculation, surprising, that'll go on behind the scenes. Now, you'll never see a legislator at least I've never seen legislators go out and really admit that this is what goes on. But having been, I've observed this for a long time, and you talk to staffers, both partisan staffers from the Democrat and the Republican side, and nonpartisan staffers over the years. I live in Thurston County, and most of these people do as well. And so you run into them in all kinds of social settings outside of politics, and you get a chance to get a little bit more of the inside story of what they tell you goes on. I think you find that a lot of that, a lot of this isn't exactly the way it's presented to us in the public. Here's a question. Clarity Vald 8385. Is it possible that the tax has less to do with gathering tax revenue than it is to chase homeowners off their land? Could it be to have a new non-citizen voter base or profit off the land? This has been okay. So, and you're asking this in the context, I'm assuming, of the income tax, saying that, okay, that's going to drive people off the land. But that's not what drives people off their property. What would drive people off their properties and has driven people off their properties is an abusive land use and permitting departments and building code divisions, depending on what they call it locally. Your local plan department is where local dreams go to die, where they abuse homeowners and property owners for no reason other than for their own fantasies, whatever they've made up and justified for their own existence, and also property taxes. And those two things kind of overlap with each other. And that's kind of that little subset of regulations and costs are usually what start to drive people away from their property or preventing and denying home ownership for future generations. The biggest cost increase outside of overall inflation, and even I think it beats inflation when you really look at it cumulatively, is regulatory approach and structure to how they manage both land and buildings. And when they do that, they're able to drive a lot of people, especially if you're on the edge. Like, it's a stretch to get this house for you, and you're barely keeping up. And then all they have to do is just keep throwing another stupid tax, another slight increase in the property tax, a regulatory restriction over here on septic systems, an increasing setback on the buffer zone, which lets you use less of your yard maybe, whatever it is. And they find all these different things, and they become the proverbial straw on the camel's back. Each new straw, some camel somewhere is collapsing from it, and that's mostly what drives it. An income tax has always been more of a holy grail for Democrats in our state because they feel like they're kind of reaching their maximum tax extraction with most of these other options they have out there. And there's no such thing as enough. When you're a government bureaucrat, they want to take every single possible dollar they can from you and redistribute it to their friends and campaign supporters. And so that's just how they roll. This seems like a pot they can go down, or at least a trail they can go down. And even if everything's a lie, even though we know anybody who believes in math and reality realizes that if this tax were to be implemented, it would take a couple years. Even if they pass it, it'll take years to get there. But if they pass it and they go down that road, meanwhile, the budget's going to be collapsing, right? And so all their projections are going to be off. And so as that each year goes by, and I think it's every 6 months or so, or every quarter, that they're reevaluating some of the actual cash coming in, it's diving off a cliff right now. And as it keeps going, these stupid taxes are basically retarding growth for the future. So you're going to have fewer businesses, if any, that decide to move to Washington State. You're going to chase away some that have the flexibility of moving. And when you lose big ones like Amazon or Microsoft, where they decide they're not going to expand here anymore, once you chase big companies like that, they take 50, 60,000 workers with them, which then compounds into all kinds of other impacts. So, and then the money just won't be there. And at some point in time, even government eventually has to face reality. What these guys are doing is figuring it won't be their problem. They're going to take theirs, make sure their friends get theirs, and when they see the writing on the wall, you'll see a bunch of politicians decide to bail at the last minute so that they can leave it in somebody else's court. And that's probably how most of these Democrats are thinking right now. But I think the income tax is more abusive, less to people who have property, although there may be a bit of an overlap, than it is to people who are entrepreneurial or who want to attract talent to Washington State. You will basically end a lot of that growth and shift people that might be thinking about starting a business away from Washington somewhere else. T.T. Burton, people still have time to testify against the Democrat bills. I agree, and I think it's making a bigger impact than most people realize. I read the bill and then go to what is added and tell them why I am a no. The agenda is posted daily. Agreed. And I have to compliment the tens of thousands of people right now that are really doing a pretty good job on a pretty regular basis, staying on top of the bills. Many of these email lists and signing in con and in opposition, it is making an impact. You see these big government types inside very upset and annoyed about how this improved transparency and access to commenting on bills has made it more and more clear that the political insider class and the lobbyist class is entirely out of line and out of touch. Remember, there are hundreds of millions of dollars that are behind this income tax push because these guys figure that they can all profit from it. And so with all of the paid people that the left has, it was amazing that you had such blowback and pushback from over 61,000 people signing in opposition to that tax. A new state record that's not going to be easy to be broken. Let's see. Another question down here. Have anyone, this is a question from Dunn Drewski 342. Have anyone here in Washington ever go visit the law library and study the true laws in Washington State by any chance, like studying the Constitution and common law, et cetera? Yeah, actually, hundreds of people. If you ever go to the library, I've gone there a number of times to look up things specifically. You can spend a lot of time in there. I find it fascinating and interesting. And it is worth looking at that. Most of it, I will tell you, you can get online now, not 100% of it. The biggest value is digging into particularly like older cases, and there is some stuff you can get out of it. I like the state archives. I've really spent some time there myself and looked at it. But you're asking a generic question about has anyone? Yes, and you're not the first person that's thought that. You're probably not the first thousandth person that's thought that, but I don't think it's more than maybe a couple hundred people in the last 30 or 40 years. It's not super common for people to do that. It takes a lot of time. So you can do that, and I think it's interesting, especially if you're a history guy. Let's see. Miss Minder Sue, supposedly Washington has a great constitution of its own. Yes, we do, actually. Washington State has a great constitution. It's a question more about how much our elected political class is willing to follow it and how much they are ignoring it or choosing to ignore it. We really do have a problem with our Supreme Court, or Washington State Supreme Court, and some of the court system that we have right now, which is not good. And there's definitely a lot of issues there. I'm trying to catch up, guys. There were a bunch of questions. Okay, there we go. Okay. Here's the next question. Clarity Vald 8385. Okay, or could it be that the 9.9% tax, similar to the Virginia 9.9 tax, has less to do with supporting those states, but refilling the lost funds of the DNC? They shouldn't, but they would. Yeah, of course. I mean, a lot of this is, and I don't think people fully appreciate, that's a great question, by the way. Less a question than a comment, but I'll treat it like a question a bit. A group of politicians, especially the Democrats or people who went to Evergreen State College or something like that, who have zero attachment to both reality or math, they'll happily give away $1 million to get a $100 contribution in their political campaign next year. It's not their money. Giving away other people's money is fun for them. It's always easy to be generous when it's somebody else's money. this was a widely recognized human condition and problem, of course, that we have. Some people have talked about this frequently in the past. I mean, anybody that studied Hayek, read Road to Serfdom, paid attention to von Mises, if you've ever done anything at all related to economics, you know that this is what happens. And it's not as it's amazing how much money they'll squander, waste, and hand out, knowing that only it's less than 1% of that's going to come back in their political campaign. That's still money they're trying to get. And so refilling the coffers, whether that's the political party or ground troops that they can count on to do a pop-up protest somewhere or a riot, they don't care. I mean, it's just like the WEA, the Washington Education Association. They don't care that students are out there assaulting parents for riot days when they convince these students to leave and pretend like they're protesting ICE. Students will happily get out of class. The teachers will happily not teach that day. The WEA gets to justify, and in a pretty ignorant kind of way, but they get to justify their power base kind of in doing that and pushing whatever crazy agenda items they have. And remember, the last thing the Washington Education Association cares about is the education of your kids. I don't even think it's in the top 100 list of priorities. They don't care about that at all. I mean, I know they say window dressing that way, but that's not what they care about. They are entirely a captured political entity that only cares about their political power and, secondarily, their political objectives, this whole intersectionality of whatever agenda items that they make up in a given day. And so with Act Blue running into problems at the federal level and being investigated for fraud and corruption and money laundering, and the corresponding federal investigations that are gradually rolling out into the state level, there are a lot of concerns that the left has right now that they're losing some of the gravy trains, they're losing some of the illegal non-U.S. citizen votes, they're losing some of their power, and it seems like they can sense it, they can feel it, the money's drying up, and so this is the panic mode. You're going to see a lot of that. I actually think you're going to see a lot more of that moving forward, and so you have to be ready for it and be prepared and knowing that it gets crazier usually before it gets better. I see a lot of different comments here. Those aren't questions, so I'm trying to get down to some of the questions here. Jason Fisher, 1530, question, why are Virginia and New Mexico going pedal to the metal on gun control? Will the UK Prime Minister resign? Two different questions. Virginia and New Mexico are going pedal to the metal on gun control because they believe this is one of their last shots. Typically, especially if you see the potential that you're going to lose power to Republicans accidentally, and the Republicans say accidentally take back over some of these states, Republicans historically talk bigger than they actually deliver when they get into public office. Part of it's just the wishy-squishy nature of the political process, and Republicans like to pretend that when they get in there that they're not going to get serious about doing the job they've been hired to do, and so a lot of them collectively they'll shift it back a little bit, but mostly they kind of lose sight of what they ran on once they get into office. And so a lot of them won't stick to their guns all the way through. There's always exceptions. Listen, I work with good people that are Republicans who are sticking to their guns. You got some really great legislators this cycle that are doing an amazing job playing defense, throwing out amendments, pushing back, trying to kill bills. A lot of these bills are going to die because of a lot of good work that are being done by the Republicans in both houses in the state house, but they're in the minority, so they're really playing a rearguard action right now and kind of a guerrilla war more than anything else. But historically in the states, especially in the states that are right on the edge, the Republicans barely get in, the Democrats come back, which Virginia and New Mexico have kind of done a few times. In states like that, the Republicans tend to be really weak because they're always this squishy-wishy thinking that playing in the middle is going to work, and the Democrats treat it more like a ratchet. They ratchet a couple dumb bad ideas, the Second Amendment or the First Amendment or taxes or something. The Republicans campaign against that, and they get in there, and then they don't lift the ratchet and go back or eliminate those bad ideas, or even better yet, go back and actually implement reforms that would downsize the bureaucratic and abusive nature of government. And this is the era in which we live, and hopefully we are going to find some new political class, and I don't know if it's just a new generation coming up, that's going to recognize that you can't just go and always having this one-way ratchet towards big government, abusive government, expensive government, and corrupt government. If you want to reduce the corruption, you're going to have to reduce the size of government. And it starts by just downsizing the state in a lot of ways and having people be more productive in what they do. I do believe the UK Prime Minister ultimately ends up resigning when he's absolutely forced to do so, when it looks like a tsunami of anti-labor sort of sentiment is setting in the country. England has definitely gone down a weird and self-destructive path right now, and hostility to First Amendment, absurd immigration policies, ridiculous tax restrictions, and I don't, despite everything, I kind of see that turning around somewhat. We'll see what happens. Let's see. Jason Fisher, 1530. What bills do you think will pass this year? It looks like 3D gun bill will pass. Maybe. It could be that what they're trying to do on that one is set it up for a legal challenge, and therefore that one is the type of bill that could get passed. I honestly find it to be too early to predict on these bills. There's a number of bills that have already been killed, of course. The government-run grocery stores, what a dumb idea. That one died, of course. The ICE agents can't be hired in law enforcement, another stupid idea. That one died. There's a number of others. I'll do a quick video on it, probably launch for the next couple days, of some of the stupid bills that have already died. But of course, there's a lot more that should die. And there's a couple of cutoffs, Ways and Means cutoffs, some Rules Committee cutoffs, a number of these different appropriations committees, a number of these different cutoff points that are coming up. Remember, it's a short session, 60 days compressed. I know they spread it out over a little bit longer period of time because of weekends, but they compress these 60 days in very quickly, and they really only have one thing they have to do, which is a budget review at the end. They're also supposed to review the initiatives, which the Democrats didn't want to spend any time on. But again, breaking the law is a common behavior for the Democrats, so ignoring what's going on out there is kind of what they like to do. But I would anticipate that majority of these things do not get out of the legislature. That has mathematically been the history of a short session. And even a contentious session, it's not as close. It would be much better if the Republicans had about 4 more seats in either house. But I mean, just closing that gap in the representation would give the caucus on the Republican side more leverage. That's why this session coming up, the election season, and some of the reforms that we've been talking about doing on election reform, why they're so important, is that if we could have just even a few more seats flip, it starts an impact on the Democrat caucus, with a little less likely to push crazy ideas. But we'll see. Let's see. I don't see, okay, there's no questions in that particular batch. I'm looking through a lot of things that are not questions here, so, which is totally fine, but I'm trying to get 2 questions. Further down, Jason Fisher, 1530, question, what things do we need to watch in Clark County? Is the Vancouver City Council going to move left? And the answer is almost always a default position in city governance right now, is that yes, they usually will move left. A lot of the cities have particularly seem to have a high objective of self-immolation, and the Vancouver City Council seems to be on that path as well. The potential offset that they have, though, is that Portland is in such a disarray right across the river that to some extent Vancouver's always benefited from being the saner alternative to the craziness in Portland, and I do believe it's one of the things that's contributed to growth in Clark County. So unless Washington State decides to truly set itself on fire with a income tax and absolutely collapse its growth and economic potential, I would anticipate that Vancouver's always going to want to be the less crazy twin sister to Portland, and we will see. We'll see how that works here. Jason, you're the only one asking questions. A lot of people are doing some commentary, but I'll just keep answering Jason's questions here. Jason Fisher, 1530, question, did you see the protests down the street from Prairie High School go crazy with pro and anti-ICE protesters fighting sheriff and state police? They made arrests, and who are complicit? I didn't see that one. The one I saw was the Issaquah one, where they kind of spun up these students in Issaquah right before the levy vote, which is awesome, I guess. And they attacked a parent. I mean, totally assaulted adults that were, it just... It's beautiful, genius move, the WEA. I'm going to encourage the WEA to get students out of the classroom rioting on the streets right before people go to the ballot to vote for your levy in the school. That seems like a great idea. I'd encourage you to keep doing that. See what happens to those levies moving forward. And anyway, it's I don't know if it's possible to exaggerate the level of stupidity and incompetence that's exhibited almost on a regular basis by some of these bureaucrats and their genius moves. Now, obviously, it makes you wonder then, why can't you remove them, even if they've done a lot of things to structurally reinforce their power base there? But it is crazy. So anyway, that's where they're at. Somebody in saying that I'm funny. That's great. I'm not trying to be funny, although I do have a dry sense of humor, and I've been accused of that many times. I plead guilty to that. Let's see. We're not tired of winning yet. Yeah. Well, okay. So this is funny. And this is Miss Minder Sue saying we're not tired of winning yet. Ice baby. Listen, there's a lot of things that the country's chaotic in a lot of ways right now, and the divisions are probably less, even though I'm mocking the left and they deserve every bit of mockery that gets directed at them, even though I mock Evergreen State College, which obviously isn't really a real college, even though I mock the corruption and the bureaucracy and the grant grifting enterprises that exist out there, and they deserve all the mockery that I'm giving them and much more. It's still serious, their corruption and destruction, because all those tax dollars that are given to them are money that was hard-earned by somebody somewhere along the way, where they had to go out and work hard and send some of their hard-earned money that they could spend better to protect their family, to fix their car, to do repairs on their house, to go on a vacation with the kids, to do something better. I don't care if it's just going out and going to Comic-Con and hanging out with Steve Hobbs dressed as Captain America. Whatever you want to do to spend your money would be way better than whatever happens to that money when you send it over to the government. And, I did the survey, obviously, where most of you believe that that at least 50% of the tax dollars in Washington State are just squandered, wasted, or stolen. You're probably right. And looking at it, and understanding that is frustrating, because it'd be one thing if they just were going out and squandering it and wasting it and burning the money up. It's just that they spend that money on things that actively hurt us and damage us. And at some point in time, the shift is going to occur. There is always a pendulum switch. There is always a pendulum swing in politics. And when that pendulum swing goes the other way, and we get people in there who believe math is real, who don't buy into these con artist games, the important thing is to not replace them with your own con artist game. The important thing is to significantly and dramatically downsize government so that there is no excuse or reason or justification to extract the volume of life energy, tax dollars, your personal property from people, and flood it into whatever dreams and schemes and utopian hopes that you have in government. It has to be a primary objective for those of us who care about good governance to substantially downsize the state. And understanding what parts need to be cut and in what order and how fast, and the answer to that is as fast as possible. And then eliminating the ability of the state to collect cash or extract money or in the future is really important. This is actually what the Republicans should be coming up with as their alternative option as they move forward. Now, right in the middle of session, they're not going to do it. Your elected Republican legislators are battling tooth and nail right to the end. It's brutal. Short session tends to end quickly. Thank God we don't have a full-time legislature. That would be a nightmare. But at least defeating as much of this as they can in the next month or so, and doing the best they can to push back. And then most importantly, we do have to get new people elected. Now, I know about all the problems in our election system. Nobody knows it. I won't say nobody, but very few know it better than I do. And I've had a fight on this issue for a long time. Many of you know this. But it doesn't mean that you just pre-surrender, and you will not escape this. I wish you could. I wish there was some place you could run to, but you can't. I've seen the foundation of all the dumb, bad ideas that Washington State has right now already being laid in South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, Texas. Every single state out there that you think is red is already, the foundation's being laid to make it blue tomorrow. much quicker than you realize, because the Republicans in those states, dumb as a box of rocks, clueless as heck, and totally unaware of what's being built around them. Sometimes they use different language. Sometimes they import the activists from our state. If you don't defeat it in our state, it spreads to those places. And that's why the fight in our state and Virginia and Minnesota and Pennsylvania and these other states, this is why it's so important, because if we defeat it here, it's about playing offense and pushing back and making it so that we get rid of it. Somebody said they love my shirt and it brings out the color of my eyes. Actually, I think my eyes are a little bit more green than they are blue here, but thank you for the compliment. Will Trump fix our election system? This is a question from Kid City 1985. The answer to that is I don't know. I mean, the litigation in driving into exactly what the heck's going on with our voter rolls is very important. We are actively in court for the first time in a century in our state. Not unusual for Democrats. Democrats go to court frequently. They've oftentimes tried to manipulate the voter rolls. It's a long history going all the way back to Reconstruction days. But the litigation could lead to substantial improvements. I think if the SAVE Act is passed at the federal level, that would have a very positive impact. I think if the Act of Blue investigation isn't paid off or shut down, if they actually go all the way and investigate the fraud, the money laundering operations, I think that will also benefit our state substantially. And I also believe that fixing some of these election problems and, frankly, just deporting a lot of illegal voters out of the country, all these things are going to cumulatively add up and make it a better place. But it's going to take a lot of work. People who think you can just outsource your freedom to somebody else, no matter how good they are, that's a mistake. You still have to stand up for yourself. You still have to organize yourself locally with other people and push back. Let's see. Jason Fisher, 1530, will the puppet sheriff bill pass? Good question. I don't know on that one. That one might die, but we'll see. Next question, Stephen T, 3238. How will the legislature balance the budget and address the current budget deficit? Isn't a balanced budget required? Good question. And the answer is yes, a balanced budget is required. However, one of the things that happens with a balanced budget is they do still play games around the edges. Now, listen, it's much better to live in a state that does have a balanced budget requirement because, in theory, it prevents you from spending outside of your means. We still have a substantial rainy day fund in Washington state. And the rainy day fund, I would predict, gets raided at some point in time if the Democrats don't get the taxes that they want to get through. And cutting back on spending is the last-ditch event for them. And so what they will probably do is put together fake Office of Financial Management budget projections that make it seem like it's bluebird butterflies and sunshine moving forward. And in reality, it's going to be worse, but they'll let that budget impact hit in the summer, right? You know, so I could see them doing some game like that. We do have a fairly large reserve fund still in Washington state they could draw from. That would carry them through another year or two of prolific waste and squandering of resources. So that would be something I could see them doing. And then eventually real cuts wouldn't happen for, in my opinion, for another year if they couldn't get some of the taxes proposed. Even if this income tax doesn't help them at all for years. It doesn't go into effect for a long time. So we'll just have to see where it goes from there. Let's see. Michael Case, 8231. When logging in to comment about bills, should people be doing more than just saying nope? Yeah, I would write in a whole comment if you can. Would full-on comments defeat the notion of bots being used? Not necessarily. They're just going to pretend like they're bots if they don't like the outcome. But adding commentary is good, and the more commentary, the better. And I think putting a lot of that in there is helpful. If you have the time and knowledge, signing up to testify online is good. Doing a quick, but be pithy, be focused. You can testify that way. If you are a little bit more skilled and experienced, doing it in person is also very good to do as well. Let's see. I'm trying to go down here. Oh, somebody says God wins in the end. Yeah, that's probably true. But also, I still think that there's no scripture that I've ever read that says surrender and give up, all hope is lost. And yet that is the attitude I get from a lot of people who have kind of a rapture theology approach to things, where they think that pre-surrender is the best approach. And I completely disagree. I've had this debate and argument with plenty of pastors over the years, and I am not going to change my mind on that. I think fighting back and pushing back is a good idea. A good idea and a good way to live your life anyway. I don't know why you'd want to pre-surrender to terrible ideas and bad people. Let's see, Miss Minder Sue, it was very nice to meet you at the recent protests in Olympia. Yes, thank you so much for being there. If I think I know who you are, I think we took a photo together, so I'm glad that I saw you there. Thank you for showing up. Again, as I always say, the future belongs to those who show up. If you don't show up, you can't make a difference at all, and nobody cares if you're just crying in your beer at home or you're running away. Then you're irrelevant and not part of the solution. Here's a question, Jason Fisher, 1530. Again, in your opinion, is the EU a criminal syndicate, and should it be broken up by RICO laws? The European Union is not. I mean, listen, the way it's run is a fiasco and a disaster. But I mean, listen, if they want to, there's a lot of ways, but Europe's being run by an even worse, unaccountable bureaucracy than what we have in our country. And it is a big problem. I think the challenges facing Europe are far, far worse than anything we face in our country. And if we prevail in America, in a lot of ways, we can have a substantial influence on restoring freedom and liberty in Europe, or at least reducing the amount of self-destruction that they seem to be focused on implementing themselves. However, it is very, very difficult to imagine what it's like in Europe. I have a son right now living in Germany, and he's on an exchange program. And my oldest daughter is in the Air Force Academy, and I know she's going to be in Germany next semester on an exchange program with one of their military academies over there. And you know, I've got a lot of friends that live over in Europe, and I've spent time backpacking and traveling in Europe myself when I was younger, and my wife and I. And I care about Europe. I think there's a lot of opportunities over there, but you can't make them fix their own problems if they're totally unwilling to do so. I think the average person wants to fix it. I think that they suffer from two big problems. Number one, their media is even worse than ours. Number two, their bureaucracy is even more entrenched, and the control of their day-to-day lives by the bureaucracy is worse than what we have here. The scary part of that is it shows that people can still live and kind of go through a facade of having a functioning government, even worse than what we see today. So I think resisting it and defeating it here is a very important thing. There's a great comment down here, Jeremiah 29:11, yo. Even David had to pick up a rock. And that is a great I love it when somebody can bring up a biblical story and point out the fact that, yes, you're going to probably have to do something if you want to push back against the left. People that sit back and don't want to do anything more than yell at their TV screen or, hardly do anything, don't make a single impact in their community and expect somehow it's going to change things. I'm afraid that's a delusion that is maybe not quite as harmful as what we see coming out of Evergreen State College, but it is still a delusion of its own and not helpful in trying to fix the problems that we have here. Let's see, guys, I'm looking at my time here. This is generally when I start to wrap up. I'm going to wrap up with two things here. Number one, I want to just outline a couple of other places. There's been some great alternative media coverage. As you've seen lately, the Seattle Times wants the government to fund itself because the Seattle Times anticipates that they will go under soon. So do most of the legacy media. And so I want to point out that pay attention to what Brandy Cruz has been doing. She's been doing some great stories lately. Really, really good reporting. Jonathan Cho, our own Jonathan Cho out of Seattle, funded by the Discovery Institute. He's been doing some great stories on the ground, researching the homeless industrial complex, crime, fraud. He's just been doing a lot of good stuff on the ground. Ari Hoffman and Jason Rantz, both talk show hosts out of Seattle, but definitely doing a good job, continuously exposing story after story of stories that you would not know if it was not for the work that they're doing. Brian Haywood, I would follow him on X. Follow all these guys on X. Make sure you follow all of them because each of these people, Brian's obviously been involved in Let's Go Washington and the initiative process. He also has started haywire.org, which is a website, kind of a news aggregation website from Washington State, and Haywire Media, which is a brand new YouTube channel that he just set up. And listen, if you've been paying attention to anything in Washington State lately, Brian Haywood's one of the people you should be following and paying attention to. I've been helping a little bit with Haywire Media, and I'm happy to help with it more as much as I can moving forward. I try to help all these guys in any way I can, because it's not about building your own little personal media empire, whatever that means. It's really more about trying to fix what's broken in Washington State, which is a tagline for Let's Go Washington. It's a good one. But it's really more about getting more people out there like us doing some of this work. We need another 100 or 200 people like us all over Washington State to make this impact. But for now, we have the people who are out here doing stuff. Jim Walsh does a great job, I think, reporting on what's going on in Olympia. You should follow him if you don't already. There's a number of legislators, I think, that are doing a pretty good job out there. I can't name them all right now, but Travis Kochier, I would follow him on X. I would make sure Matt Marshall, follow him on X. These are people that I think are making a big impact in Olympia. I'm not trying to leave anybody out. There's a bunch of you. If you're watching this, I love you. I know you're doing a good work, but I'm just thinking of a couple people offhand, and I didn't really take very good notes here to prep this. But I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to expose the truth. And it starts with getting more people out there engaged and involved, who are willing and able and capable communicators, hopefully, in the ability to spread this information far and wide. If you come to tomorrow's event in Thurston County, you'll know that I am trying to encourage more people to be willing to set up their own ability to do studio type work like this, or to be able to start podcasts and article websites where they're actually producing good articles and content, whatever we have to do to get this word out. There's a lot of important information that the average person just has no idea is happening. And the more educated people get about exactly how bad government really is, the more likely it is that we'll build momentum to have that reform in the future. I don't believe in utopia coming, not on this planet, not in our lifetimes, but I do believe in fixing and addressing the problems that exist here, and there's a good reason to do so, and that's future generations, and not surrendering and giving up a state that generations of us before have brought to a pretty healthy and good place, and there's no reason to surrender it and hand it over to a bunch of clowns and crooks. So pushing back on this is worth the effort and worth the fight. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this live stream. I have to confess, I'm not a live stream. I don't watch live streams myself that much. And so it did take a while to convince me to start doing these a few years ago. Happy to continue to do them as long as they're providing value and content for people who are watching. If you know people that need to see things like this, stories, this is a long one, but if they want to see some of my regular video content, feel free to share my channel with them. I do expect my website to be kind of going through a little bit of a revamp pretty soon, so there'll be more activity on it soon. There's a lot that's going on out there, guys, and just remember, if you want to make a difference, you got to be willing to show up. I always say it all the time, and I'll end tonight's live stream the same way I end most of my videos. The future belongs to those who show up, so keep showing up out there, guys. You're doing a great job, especially the comments on the bills in the legislature. And let me know what you think of the videos. I launched 2 today. I got a couple more, 2 or 3, depending on how late I stay here tonight, that I will try to roll out over this next week. And I'm looking forward to seeing all my friends and those various events coming up in Washington State. We'll see you later.